So I do come from a very small country. It's quite fitting that I'm following that amazing dance that we just saw. I'm representing Africa and African culture. I come from a twin island country, Trinidad and Tobago. Born in Trinidad, did my first degree in Trinidad, so in many ways I'm a product of that culture. But when I was asked to speak today, I talk to my students all the time and I seed my lectures with stories about me. But I decided to take the opportunity today to share with you some of the lessons that I learned from my teachers growing up, and to give some context that the journey that we're all on actually is a very similar journey. We may take different ways to get there, coming from different places, but in many ways we do actually share a very similar journey. So I thought I would start with this idea from piano keys to code, what I learned from my teachers. And I'll start with piano keys because that's one of my earliest memories of learning, had to do with the piano. And I'll explain that in a second. And I'll lead to my later ideas and what I teach here when I teach new media and when I teach contemporary communication, what I learn about code. And code meaning not just the stuff that we do in computer systems or in engineering systems, but code also meaning a system of organizing, a system of regulating, and a system basically that talks about conduct of systems and of people. So these lessons I'm going to share with you actually share the things I've learned about how to conduct myself in this world, and I want to share that with you. And I'm going to start with piano keys. When I was about 5 or 6 years old, I know this will be a surprise to you, but I was quite precocious, right? I actually believed at that point that I not only had learned pretty much everything I needed to know about life at 5, 6, but also that I would probably become quite famous and maybe piano would be that way. You know, I projected forward, I visualized myself on stage, piano, some lovely dress, perhaps an orchestra backing me up, right? But definitely I had what it took in terms of passion and belief in myself. So my mom, being very supportive, signed me up for piano lessons. And, you know, I don't know if I got to 10,000 hours. I just know that quite far along, the piano teacher eventually said to my mother, "No, dear. This is just not to be." Okay? So what could I take away from that? Crushed. Why is this piano not bending to my will? How are my hands not producing what they're supposed to do? What is going to happen when I curtsy and the orchestra is behind me and I can't play? The first lesson, I think, was one of perspective, which basically goes on to say perspective means sometimes not being afraid to redefine a passion, okay? So where could I go with that? Well, actually, I was really good at theory of music. Didn't know that. So that was the next step. So not at 6, by the way, that took a little longer. But when I was 11, I was exposed to the theory of music, where you could learn to read and write, you know, the actual components of what was played. I also liked to sing. And I found that then if you could read the notes and if you can write the notes, and you could produce music as well. And so I took that passion, yet I still can't play piano at all to save my life, but I went all the way up to grade 8 theory with the Royal Conservatory of Music. And so although I was never meant to be the one on the stage bowing quite in the way, I am able to read music to help people understand music and to compose music, right? Which is a way of redefining and taking a different perspective. So I think as an early lesson, it's not so much if you find you try something and you're not amazing even after applying yourself quite diligently, it might be that you need to rotate the idea and try it from a different perspective, because there's probably something there that can grow and blossom. Another lesson, I would say, so that one was a piano teacher. You know, I learned from my parents as from the first teachers that we're really exposed to, those that lead us in the home. And so I want to recognize there were many lessons I learned, of course, but one that stuck with me all the way through is this belief that was sort of given to me very early in a learning moment, that speaking up and standing up is very important. And I talk to students all the time about this, about finding your voice. And when I teach the big lecture theater, the 100-level classes, it's a big lecture theater, I walk among the students and I lean in and ask them to contribute. Not because I'm particularly picking on them, because I want them to realize that they can stand up and they have something to say. And sometimes it's important to speak up. So the lesson I learned, I would say I was around 8. Let's go forward a bit. It's around 8 years old. And my father had determined that, you know, say 7 p.m. was a good time where there'd be no more watching TV. I was a pretty big TV fan. This was not working for me. So I stormed upstairs in, you know, a fit of 7-year-old rage and angst. And I said, you know what? He always says that I should speak up. So I'm going to speak up. I spent, I would say, a good half an hour finding construction paper, found a piece of a stick and a marker, and I put together this protest. I then roped in my 5-year-old brother. Actually, he wasn't even 5. I think he was more like 4, 3. He was little. He didn't know what was going on, right? I said, you hold this placard and you follow me. And he did. Such is the power of the older sibling. And we protested. We prepared, I did anyway, what would move my audience, what I could put forward as rationale and reasoning to make me stay up beyond 7 and watch TV a little longer. I had persuasive language, and I also realized that you couldn't push too hard. You also needed to know when to pull back a bit, so learn a little humility. So I remember coming down those steps from upstairs with the placard, my brother behind me, coming down, and I was shaking. I'd never done anything like this. This was first parental opposition. And I will never forget the look. My parents just looking up at the step, wondering, what is going on? We marched a circle into the living room. We stood with our 2 placards. You know, it said, we demand, or I request, I don't know what I said. More TV, please. And then they said, well, speak. And so I spoke up, and I made my case. At 7 p.m., you know, very important information is being presented to society. For social studies, I am sure it will be important for me to see the following shows on whatever, and I listed the shows. If you want me to be a citizen that speaks up, I need to be informed beyond the 6 p.m. window on matters of the world, and so on and so on. I don't actually recall if it worked. But what I do remember is seeing in my parents for the first time, they stopped, they listened, and they responded on what felt like an equal basis for the first time. And I've never let that go. So the speaking up, but it's not just about speaking up. You have to prepare, you have to be persuasive, and you have to be humble if you want to move your audience. Where did that lead to? As a teenager in high school, I did go up for youth parliamentary debates in Trinidad, and I was representing a constituency, and I was given this role, and I had 2 minutes to speak to the speaker and make a point. This isn't me, but this is the actual youth parliamentary debate in Trinidad. And I remember Mrs. Voss, who was our science teacher, but also the debate teacher, really telling us that it's not enough to speak up or stand up, but you have to do that with responsibility. And remember who you're speaking for. You know, step forward. It's not just me and my brother in the living room. but you're speaking now for a group of people, a constituency, people who believe and have put you there, and there's a responsibility that you bear. And that's a lesson that I take forward. The third is around work ethic. Dr. Daphne Phillip was a professor at the University of the West Indies who taught me sociology. And she was just a fabulous woman. She had this composure. She came to class, very prepared. She had beautiful elocution. And one day I came to her after class and said, I don't understand. I got 94. I just need one more mark. I'm sure you guys never do this sort of thing. But what would it take for me to get that one more mark? And she said to me, stop. Being bright is simply not enough. There is something called working beyond that extra point. I cannot give it to you. You have to earn that. And I say this to my students here all the time. You're all bright, right? I take that as a starting out position. But you have to develop a work ethic that says not fighting for that one more point, but pushing yourself beyond so that you can get that one more point. You don't have to ask for it. You earn it yourself. And I always took that to heart, that being bright is never going to be good enough. The other thing she taught us is that you have to have balance. As you develop that work ethic, there has to be a balance where you have to have fun too. Okay, and you have to do things outside of the classroom. So whether it is, we heard some inspirational talks earlier about climbing, and achieving these amazing goals. It can be simpler. It could be learning to knit. It could be joining a dance troupe. It could be learning an instrument like piano. They're better than I did. But find some balance in your life. And you find that while you do your extracurricular, your curricular, your classroom work actually improves along with it. And that balance is part of developing a work ethic. So not to see work ethic just about just spending more time in the library or more time at your desk, but time away from that so that you can expand and actually bring things from the world into your scholarly life as well. The last one I want to share with you is sort of what I'm learning from our children. My husband and I are privileged to have 2 children. We have a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old. And they believe in magic still. It's quite amazing. And I don't really mean magic as in the top hat and the rabbit and that sort of magic. But I teach sort of the nuts and bolts behind technology. So when a phone magically rings and a call comes from across the world, I break down for students which protocols that went through, what networks that passed through, all the different routers and switches, and that kind of demystifies quite a lot of the magic. But what my children remind me all the time is that we need to still believe and be in awe and be just in amazement of the beauty of other people around us and of life itself. And more and more, I get that when I work with my children and have fun with them as well. I remember to stop and just believe in all these amazing things that are out there. And how I take that forward, and really you do this with me in the classroom, is in the power of imagination. There's a magic in imagination. It's about expanding and really trying something beyond where we think we could take an idea. And I get that from you. Many times when we're in conversation or when we're in class or when I read your papers, I see that imagination at work. I see all these things that we're doing in different places coming together and see you synthesize. I meet you and I hear the amazing things you're trying out in different spheres and still bringing that to bear on that whole person that you're becoming. And I'm so inspired by that. And I see magic in you. And so I want to keep encouraging you to dream big, and keep that sense of wonder alive in yourself. Our 10-year-old daughter is autistic and so differently abled. She loves music, so I guess that gene of the piano skipped. She can play piano for about 4 hours a day, and she's quite amazing. She can't read the music like I can, but she certainly can play it way better than I can. But one of the things that's really cool about watching her play So when she plays a note or hears a note, she listens to the note well beyond the point where we would have already made applause or got up and left. There's a stillness, and she listens to the resonance of a sound until it is absolutely not possible to hear anymore. And that for me is magic. And I can just imagine in her mind what's happening there. That ability to pause and see something all the way through. And that's something that I learned from her. And she's an amazing teacher in teaching those of us in our household and those that meet her how to pause and to maybe see the world and listen and appreciate and believe in the magic that is in the air, which is the stuff that I teach, but in quite a different way. So as I go through my journey and my path, I'm not done. There's lots more heading in there, and I will continue to learn, which is the greatest thing about, I think, being a human is that never-ending capacity to learn. I hope you see that in your life, as you reflect, you will see that there are many teachers in your life, and the lessons you're learning are quite similar in many ways to the lessons that I am finding in my life. Thank you.